if you ask any Spanish native speaker, ¿qué es el subjuntivo? Right, the subjunctive. I think like 95% of them would be like, who? Because we have no idea about that. Alrighty then, so how to learn Spanish? What a title, right? So, I mean, I don't claim to be an expert in Spanish or anything. I mean, I'm kind of cheating because I'm a native Spanish speaker. So I didn't actually have to learn Spanish as you would. I mean, I guess I did have to learn Spanish. I mean, that's how I learned when I was a small child, right? But what I mean is like, it's a total different experience to learn a second or third language whenever you're an adult or at least a young teenager, right? But I did have to learn English, and well, this is me speaking in English, right? So hopefully this will convince you that I know what I'm talking about, especially with Spanish. I figure I would make a video because so many people get confused with what to do, what to learn, what not to learn. Is grammar okay? Do I have to do like immersion or not? Please understand that you have such a big advantage because I mean, if you're watching this video, you either know English or you're a native English speaker. So, I mean, that's the first advantage you have. You already learned a language that is very similar to Spanish, and some people would actually like say, what about English and Spanish are totally different? And I do agree, like grammatically they're kind of different. So the pronunciation is totally different, of course, but in general, I mean, a lot of the words are shared across both languages. Whenever I say banco, you kind of get it, right? I'm talking about a bank. Or if I say carro, right, you understand it's car, right? However, if I say talco, that is not talk. And I think that's a big problem with English. It has so many cognates, which are like the words that are similar between English and Spanish. But you also have a lot of false cognates, which are words that look similar, but they are not. What to do first? You should do Anki. Anki, I think, is the best thing ever. It's gonna give you a lot of words to start with. If you don't know what Anki is, it's basically like this app that shows you a card. And so let's say it shows you a card of a word in Spanish, and whenever you click on it, it will show you like the backside of the card, which is in English. And you'll see, oh, do I know that word? Do I not know that word? And eventually, you'll get to recognize that word across days or weeks or months, however long you study for. I would just do it at the beginning, just so you notice that a lot of the words in Spanish are so similar in English. The deck I recommend is going to be the Refold 1000 word deck. I think that's the best deck ever because it's going to give you like the most common words in the language, not the most basic ones, because sometimes, like you get people telling you that, you're starting Spanish, you need to learn the colors and you need to learn the months and all. I mean, sure, they're useful to know, but they're not as common as you would imagine, right? Because the method we're using right now is going to be comprehensible input, which is basically immersion. You have to immerse in the language. You have to consume content in that language. So, I mean, how often will a color come up? You might think it will, but it's not a very common word. To see the word yellow or red is not more common than all of these words like can, would, will. All of these words are super, super useful in English, and you will see them in Spanish as well. It is much better to know the difference between por, para, or tener, hacer, mirar. Starting here, I would like to divide this guide in two parts. The first 3 months of your immersion with Spanish, and after those 3 months. First of all, the first 3 months, right? What I would do is I wouldn't stray from one accent. If you're interested in the Mexican accent, right, you would probably watch TV shows or YouTubers that have that one accent. Every country has its own words, and the way the people talk is different, right? So I would probably just stay and focus on one country, at least one accent, right? I've heard people that are trying to learn Spanish. They learned Mexican Spanish and then they travel to Argentina and they feel like they've been ripped off because like people talk just way too different in that country, right? Compared to Mexico. So just focus on one. I mean, this is not like English where, sure, like Australian English is very different from British and American English, sure. But that's 3 of them. We have a lot of countries that speak Spanish in the world, and every single country sounds different. I think the only 2 countries that I have found that sounds very similar, and it's hard for me to pinpoint if they're from that country or not, is Mexico and Colombia. I think both of them speak it's Peru also, I think. All three of them, I think they're kind of, okay, they sound kind of similar, but if you actually pay attention, you can notice, right, the difference. But I would recommend 100% to stay on one accent for the first 3 months. The next thing is immersion, right? And whether to do passive immersion or active immersion. And if you don't know the difference, great, because you don't need the active immersion, in my opinion, for the first 3 months. Just do passive immersion, which is consume content, right? Just watch TV series, movies, watch your favorite YouTuber, and yeah, just consume media in the language and use no grammar at all. Like nothing at all. No grammar allowed here. If you ask any native speaker, any Spanish native speaker, sorry, ¿qué es el subjuntivo? Right, the subjunctive. Like you'll be, I think like 95% of them would be like, who? Because we have no idea about that. We can use it, of course, right? We are native speakers and we are masters at our own language, right? But we don't know the grammar of it. And people who claim they know, they just Google it right now. So yeah, that's why I say grammar is not very important, especially at the beginning. Towards the first 3 months, definitely not. It's not very important at all. If you want to, like delve into grammar and try to like, check one point because you've been encountering it constantly, you have no idea what it means, so you actually want to know, sure, go ahead. It's not going to hurt you, but you don't need to depend on it. Don't do it because you feel you have to. Just do it because you want to do it, right? That's great. That's why we're doing immersion in the first place, because we want to do it. It's fun. It's great. Okay, so so the active immersion, right? So I wouldn't do active immersion at all. Active immersion is basically using the content to study it, right? So an example of this would be like you're watching a TV series, you stop the movie or the series, and you actually get to see one of the words, and you're like, okay, what does that word mean, right? Let me check. Okay, let me see if I can have an example of that word, and yeah, okay, I think I have it memorized. Let's keep going, right? So that's how you would do active immersion. I wouldn't recommend it for the first 3 months because most everything would be new or kind of newish to you, so you would be stopping at every single sentence, and I think that's super tiring. If you feel like doing that, I mean, all power to you. I wouldn't do that. I think it's super boring and I would never do it. I've learned 5 languages with this method and I've never done that in the first 6 months in my experience, not even 3. Now, after the first 3 months with immersion and Anki, you've been going through the motions for the first 90 days. What to do next, right? Okay, I believe after 6 months, you should be able to watch a Spanish TV show very comfortably. That's my experience with English. I would imagine that is the same for Spanish. But again, I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert in Spanish learning. I'm just a native Spanish speaker who has learned English this way, and I think this could work the same, just the other way around. Oh, also at this point you should watch TV series with different accents as well. So do not focus only solely on the Mexican's accent. For instance, if you chose that one, after the first 3 months, I think it's okay to deviate and try to see if you can find something else that is fun for you or like interesting for you, right? That's the first option. Now, if option number 2 is that if you got pretty good at understanding pretty much anything in Spanish at this point, like, okay, I can watch a TV show very comfortably. I have no trouble. I mean, yeah, sure, like I miss 1 or 2 words, but I get the gist of it. Right, if that happens to you, then it's probably time to output. Now, this is important. You need to start doing output, producing the language, while you keep doing whatever you've been doing so far, because it has clearly been working. So do not stop doing it. This is not like, okay, that's enough input, now let's go for the output. No, you have to keep going with the input and just, include the output in there, all right? So you will be doing output at the same time you're doing your input. The only thing I would probably cut is the Anki. I don't think Anki is super necessary at this point, to be honest with you. Now, for output, what to do for output? How do we produce the language, right? So first of all, start off by writing. I think writing is the best tool ever to be able to speak. That might confuse some people, but think about it. Writing is basically speaking without a voice. You're kind of writing and you're producing the language, but you can take your time. You can actually Google a word or 2 that you really wanted to use that you didn't remember the meaning of. And I think that's much better than to just go and try to straight up talk for the first time. Now, why? Because this way you'll be able to control what you're trying to say. You'll realize, oh, wow, I actually know a lot of words and I can put them on paper. which means, yeah, you can probably also speak. Now, if you feel like, no, I don't care about writing, I just want to speak, I just want to talk, go for it. It's okay. A lot of people are very cynical about this, and they're like, there's no way you'll be able to speak if you have never tried it. That's not true at all. So eventually, if you get enough input, if you understand the language enough, you will be able to speak it. Of course, the first few times are going to sound a little weird because that's the first time you're enunciating the words, right? Of course, sure. But after a while, and I'm talking about days, not even weeks, you will be able to speak very comfortably. And if you start talking to people, to native speakers, or people who have a very high level of proficiency in the language, you will be able to, like improve a lot. And I mean a lot, right? If you think about it, this is just how you learned English when you were a child, or this is the way you learn whatever your first language is. That's how you did it. This is exactly the steps you followed, except Anki, I guess. And that's why Anki is so good. It allows you to skip some of the years that it took you to understand these words in the same language, right? So 0 practice before, you'll be able to speak. English took me a long time to learn because I was very young when I learned English. I mean, very young, as I was like 15 years old. But I didn't know about this, right? So it took me a long time. And I basically learned the same way without realizing, playing video games. I just play a lot of video games. I talk to a lot of people online whenever the internet was a novel thing, right? So yeah, that's how I did it. And that's how a lot of people learn Spanish as well in like 1 year, 1 year and a half. I would probably argue that if you are a native English speaker or you have learned English as a second language, you can probably learn Spanish in a matter of months. I actually don't like to say that out loud, but I believe they're so similar and they're so easy to, like, they complement each other so well. I think you could be able to speak very comfortable Spanish in like 10 months or so, I would say. Probably a year, just to give you a solid number that I'm confident in saying. Probably say a year. I'll venture and say that, yeah, a year to be able to be fluent in Spanish. That doesn't sound ridiculous at all. I think it sounds very, very plausible. So this is my guide, guys. Hopefully you like it. If you like the content in English in my channel, I mean, sure, I usually just do it in Spanish. Just to tell people about like how to learn English, but I figure, hey, there's some of you that watch me from other countries, and I know you guys can speak Spanish, some of you, but I thought, hey, why don't I get some new people in here, and you can use my channel to learn Spanish, right? This could be your immersion. I talk about languages, I talk about every single thing, and hey, if you want to join my community, there's a lot of Spanish speakers who would love to have someone, a native English speaker or someone who speaks really good English to talk to and just interact with in order to learn English and Spanish. Well, there you go. Hopefully you like it, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later. Class dismissed.